You've tuned into InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, a video podcast series. Our episode starts right now. Here's your host, Dominique Vale.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, where you can check in for your dose of stigma-breaking, humor-filling, life hacks and motivation tips for all of the medically adultish people in your life. My name's Dominique, the founder of InvisiYouth Charity, and today is Season 2, Episode 20. The fact that I get to say Episode 20 is really exciting. We are so looking forward to the rest of our Season 2 episodes, and now hitting 20 feels like quite a milestone. So today, we're going to go out of, since we have just finished Mental Health Awareness Month and we're going into June and into the summer, we still wanted to keep that conversation going because naturally our physical and mental health doesn't go anywhere once the awareness month stops. So we are finding our special guest who has been a fantastic bridge between the social media and mental health and wellness community and bringing that into a really blended force. We always say everyone at my nonprofit has been looking at her Instagram, and trust me, it's so beautiful. You will want these photos and captions popping up on your feed. So at the end, you're going to have to make sure to give it a follow. This is the creator of the mental health and wellness blog and social media, Adventures&Anxiety, Lisa Gallo. So as Lisa's profile states, I'm going to have to read this right off the card because it was really, really great. Lisa is a self-proclaimed spirited marketer and public relations girl by day, old soul homebody, and mental health blogger by night, which I love. At 19, Lisa was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder and began her journey of mental wellness. Really going through this part of Lisa's life, she was able to then connect her appreciation for writing and make that a wonderful outlet for her use of social media and blogging, talking about her mental health. And that then became a really large format. It's not even been a year old yet, and it has such a force behind it of people really loving and using it as a resource for a lot of anxiety sufferers and those looking for through their mental health struggles to find some support and resource for that experience. So she discusses lots of topics on her blog, going from the benefits of talk therapy to tackling misconceptions about prescription medications, different avenues of health, exercise, and wellness and meditation, and how that all incorporates into mental wellness. So Lisa discusses how she can manage anxiety during even a new life event, being a newlywed this past a couple months ago in March. And so we're so excited to have Lisa and her representing her blog of Adventures&Anxiety, which is such a fast-growing following, and getting to talk about mental health in a fun, social media-filled way through a new lens. So everybody, welcome Lisa to the show. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, thank you. That was such a wonderful introduction. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so excited to have you. It's going to be great to, like I said, you've built such a lovely platform of how you talk about mental health. I know we've chatted before. It really mirrors our empowered, sort of sarcastic way of talking about chronic illness and disability across the spectrum, and you bring such a light and very honest opinion of the mental wellness community and that discussion. We're excited to get to have you going through this show and bringing some of your tips and stories to all of our listeners and viewers.
I'm just really, really honored to be here. I think what you guys do at InvisiYouth is so wonderful. So being part of this is just like the highlight of my year, probably. Well, besides getting married, as you know, I just got married. I guess I can't date my husband already. But yes, this is really an honor. So thank you so much. I'm really excited to dig into this conversation and continue that awareness around mental health for sure.
Cool. We're going to actually go off of letting our guests get to know a bit more about you in our first segment, which is 5-second challenge.
Rapid fire round.
All right, everyone, you know, with 5-second challenge, it's literally its namesake. We're going to let all of you get to know Lisa a little bit better with a rapid fire round of rapid fire round of questions that she will have 5 seconds to do. Wow, my brain works today. So we're going to go through all of these with Lisa now. Lisa, get ready. So name your top 3 favorite meals to cook.
Favorite meals to cook or eat? Well, I love dessert, so chocolate chip cookies, hands down, favorite, healthier version of it's great, but also just basic chocolate chip cookies. I love making some sort of taco, like taco bowls. I love shrimp tacos.
Nice.
I love Ooh, a third one? Pizza. I sound really basic right now. Cookies, tacos, and pizza, but I love making homemade pizza as well, and also just going
Mm.
out to eat. I am more than half Italian, believe it or not, so pizza is a big part of my life.
I'm
So there you go.
100% Italian and very albino looking, so I feel you on that one for sure.
No one ever believes me. They're like, "You're not Italian." I'm like, "Well, actually, I am." So there you go.
There
3.
we go. What would be your favorite Instagram post from Adventures and Anxiety so far?
That's a really great question. I would say I know what is the most liked post, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite post. My favorite post, which corresponds to the blog, is the one on setting boundaries.
Mm.
I just really truly believe that is something a lot of people have a hard time doing, especially if they suffer from anxiety or even just stress. I call myself a chronic people pleaser, and I'm recovering from that. So the one about setting boundaries, I can show that to you guys, but that's a big one for me. I think that's my favorite.
Oh, I love that. No, we're going to actually even talk about that topic towards the end of the show, too, so definitely stick tuned for that one. So, if you had to join a cast of a group of friends or a TV family, which one would you want to join and why?
Wow. Okay, so I'm not a huge TV person, but there are a couple shows that I am a diehard fan of. I would want to be on the cast of New Girl. I don't know if you watch that with Zoe Deschanel. Okay.
Yes.
And I just want to be best friends with Schmidt because I like self-proclaimed female version of him, I guess. I would love to be part of that show, mostly because I just love the humor, but also there's a lot of love in that show, and I don't know. I love that show, and if I could be part of it for even an episode, I would totally do it.
Oh, I love that. What about, since you are a mental health blogger, what about like your top 2 other mental health bloggers that you've loved to follow since you started Adventures and Anxiety?
That's a great question. So I highly recommend mental health or just overall wellness. Her name is Lisa Oliveira Therapy. She has a huge following. She's growing so fast. I found her at the beginning when I started Adventures Anxiety, and her words are magic. And she's actually in the process of writing a book as well. And
Nice.
we definitely back and forth on social media, so check her out. I believe her handle is just at Lisa Oliveira Therapy. And also, this is kind of a broad answer, not an exact person. But the Mind Body Green blog has a lot of mental health and anxiety awareness, and a lot of holistic tips to kind of be more comfortable and like thrive with your anxiety, which is something I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say check out Mind Body Green as well.
Oh, I like that. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
What about if you could speak another language fluently? Which one would you choose?
This goes back to my love of pizza. I wish I could speak Italian. My grandmother speaks it. Of course, I have, my dad's side of the family is from Italy, so
Nice.
if I could speak that fluently, I totally would. But I tried it in college, and it goes back to my panic disorder. I couldn't really make it through that class. We may get into that later. So if I could speak Italian fluently, I would do it.
I know. I've always wanted to try to learn like Eastern European. I speak Spanish fluently, so I have that. But I wanted to try an Eastern European language, like going into like Finnish or Dutch, and it's just so complicated. So I said, no, I'll just stick with Spanish. I can probably make that one a fluency, and then we work and just stay in my lane, and it worked out.
Yeah, I learned Spanish from a young age. I'm not fluent in it by any means, but I can definitely kind of get by there. But Italian is definitely the desire.
No, for sure. What about if you had to use 2 different phrases to explain your style of mental health activism? What would you use to describe yourself?
One, I would say relatable.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll dig into this more as our conversation develops, but I think there's a lot of extreme conversations, sometimes really, I don't know how else to put it, intense conversations around mental health, but there's also those levels that aren't that extreme that are still important. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say that my style or my blog is definitely relatable. And I'm going to go with vulnerable is probably the other one.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I've grown into with age. being able to be vulnerable, but I would say that my blog, my writing style, my personality has definitely become more and more vulnerable. I'm actually proud of that.
I love that. No, that's definitely true. What about what would be your childhood dream job? What was the one thing you wanted to do when you were really young?
This is so funny. Maybe it's because I grew up in Florida, but I wanted to be a dolphin trainer, like at SeaWorld.
That's amazing.
I don't know. Is that weird?
No, I love that. I love dolphins. I think they're the cutest. That's really, I actually never thought of like that as an actual, that's actually really sweet. I love that.
My stepsister and I would be like, that, like, when people would ask us, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? We're like, dolphin trainers. Like, I don't know who says that, but we did.
I love that. Everything I always picked was based off the outfit. So when I was really young, it was, I really, really want to be able to be I was like, I really want to be a policeman because I liked the uniform. I liked the navy and the shiny. So it's just everything when I became a tennis player, it was because I thought they had the best outfits of female athletes. So then that was what started me to play tennis, was the outfits. And then that stuck for 8.5 years. So then I liked the sport, but as a kid, it was pretty much the outfit that made my childhood job decisions.
Listen, I'm okay with that. And yes, tennis and golf, women's outfits they're just awesome.
Love
it.
I
got you there.
I love it. Shout out Serena Williams, always just crushing it in the full-on jumpsuit too. I mean, that was just, I wish they had that when I still played.
She's just a role model in so many ways, but
yes. My God, no, absolutely. So if you had to, we're going to end it on this topic. So if someone were to describe your mental health blog and how it looks and how you've gotten how many people have given you feedback, what would be sort of like 3 adjectives that somebody would use to describe how your blog looks to other people?
Ooh, I think I've used one of them. I would say relatable is one. This is weird to put with mental health, but I try to keep it a little bit lighthearted.
Yeah.
So I think that's we'll talk more about that, but I think that goes along with being relatable, is just keeping it a little bit lighthearted, kind of throwing my personality in there sometimes. And I would say bright. There are some dark times in life, but I love being a bright spot in somebody's day. So if that comes through my blog, then so be it. So I think those 3.
No, totally. The first thing I thought of was that just from an aesthetic, your blog is so visually very light and very bright. And it's awesome because I love light. It's so fresh when it pops up through our feed. I always, like I said, our volunteers would always know that Lisa's blog was popping up because it's just this bright light popping through from all the different other photos we have. So they always went, oh, Lisa has a new photo. And then there were sunflowers, which then just, you need to see those photos because they're too fantastic. I always love a good sunflower in a photo. So
my favorite flower.
Yes, me too. So that is the end of our 5-second challenge segment with Lisa, and we're going to dive right in and get some mental health empowerment chat going, guys. We're going to go into one of my favorite segments, Break That Glass Ceiling.
Break that glass ceiling. Break that glass ceiling.
All right, everyone, with Break That Glass Ceiling, this is where we take our theme of social media and mental health discussion and take that along with Lisa's blogging passion and platform and get to not only have a conversation about those most of the time not discussed topics about mental health, but how we can not only get a conversation to break that glass ceiling, but also crack open some minds while we do it. So really, it's the big first question. I know this is something you and I've chatted about too, and you do a lot on your blog, is that there's such a big issue in the young adult community of talking about mental health from this sort of the back end of feeling they would be judged if they discussed their mental health publicly, and so they end up remaining quite silent about that experience and feeling very alone in it. So where do you feel like that fear for a lot of young people originates when it comes to mental health talk?
And this isn't to blame anyone or to put the blame on anything, but this is kind of my thoughts. You know, I'm obviously not a scientist or a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I really think it starts with our upbringing. And that doesn't mean necessarily just our parents. I think it means society that we were brought up into, the peers around us, the people around us, the idea of perfectionism and that's the goal, and being mentally ill, if that's how you want to refer to it in any type of way, isn't perfect. And it's funny because I asked my mom recently, as I started to really open up about this conversation, I said, you knew what anxiety was. You had it.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you never say anything to me?
Mm.
Like, why did you never, I mean, she noticed when I was having a panic attack, even when I didn't know what it was. And she's like, I just didn't, she almost said in a way, I didn't want to scare you. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I knew you would get through it, and I knew you were strong enough, and she had so much faith in me. And trust me, I think I thank her so much for how much she's made me a strong woman. But, you know, it wasn't really a topic of conversation. And even though I was young, and, you know, I still think it's important to have that conversation. So I would say that fear starts from the beginning. And that molds into your classmates as you start school. And it's just something that I think has been shamed for a long time, but I am proud to say that I am part of the conversation that's really raising the awareness around it.
Yeah, and I love that you hit on the head that it starts from a young age, because there's so much with a lot of mental health talk being on other nonprofits and a lot of news anchor shows bringing the discussion forward, and celebrities coming forward with their sort of mental health spectrum and their journey with mental wellness and everything. It really is never addressed at the fact that nobody talks to younger kids to sort of nip that stigmatism at the start, so it doesn't continue to grow as they grow, and keep that stigma kind of moving forward. It's something I've equated this quite a bit when we talk about invisible illness outside of the mental health community and go into the physical chronic illness community. Like myself, I have chronic illnesses that affect my cardiac, my gastric, my nervous system, my neuromuscular system through my left side, and it's not visual for about 70% of the year. 30% of my full year, it's very visible, but most of the time you can't see it. And we'll always say that, well, that comes from being a young kid and your parents or doctors saying, oh, if you don't feel well or if you feel sick, you have to use your ability to point. Oh, well, where does it hurt? Where do you not feel well? So they're able to point on their body. Where did I get injured? Where do I feel sick? Is it my stomach? And they can point. So at a young age, kids sort of are equating, if I don't feel right and I don't feel well, I have to be able to show it in order to get help. And if they can't physically show it, that continues to move forward as they age, going, well, if it is my mental wellness and I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling levels of sadness that can move into depression or more into other mental health diagnoses as well, they can't visibly say anything about what it's doing because it's all internal. So I think, like you said, that's really important, is pointing out from a young age you have to address this topic. So as they get older, that's sort of shedding off a lot of the misconceptions about it.
Yeah, and you said something that it's always physical, visible, that you can point out. I remember my sister and I growing up, we would always say to my mom, like, Mom, I have this weird feeling, like, we didn't know that was anxiety when we were like 7, you know what I mean? Granted, it was definitely something we could move past, and again, I commend my mom for having like faith in us and instilling strength that we can move past it, but we didn't know how to explain it because it wasn't knowledge to us.
Yeah.
Really, it's like, it's so funny. Knowledge is power, but also ignorance is bliss. Which, there's two sides to this right here. Yeah. So, but knowledge, when it comes to mental health, I truly believe that the more you know, the more you can heal yourself and learn how to live. Maybe not heal yourself because it's always going to be part of who I am, but learn how to live and thrive with it. So I just think it's that lack of conversation, especially as a young child, and even going into your teenage years. No one ever mentioned anything to me until I was diagnosed at 19.
Yeah, yeah, and I love how you said that too. It's sort of the silence of it is what makes the fear become bigger and bigger of actually discussing it, because the longer you remain silent, the more you start to feel that something's wrong with me and feel shameful of these feelings that you have, or of a chronic illness on even the physical illness side. The silence kind of makes the one step of making a conversation start feel like bigger and bigger because you're remaining silent longer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so kind of even going off of that too, when you were talking about, at different points you talked about it even beforehand, sort of the different misconceptions of a young adult dealing with mental health. So what would you if you had to describe from your own journey and from a lot of the people who you've gotten to interact with through Adventures and Anxiety, what do you think some of the biggest misconceptions of mental health and mental illness for people really are?
I think there are two major ones. One is that mental health is all very extreme, or struggling with your mental health has to mean, and I'm using an example here, it has to mean suicidal. It doesn't. And it's funny because, and I think we've talked about this before, Dominique, but, when it comes to a lot of the conversation around mental health, and even celebrities coming out talking about mental health and going to rehab and things like that, they're at their lowest low when they start talking about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I had to submit myself into rehab, so I'm going to give a statement through my PR manager.
Yeah.
That's not the only time that mental health should be a topic of conversation. So I think a big misconception is that it's always at those really deep levels when really mental health is part of your everyday.
Yeah.
Mental health can be healthy too. So, we just have to, talking about it, that it's always a bad thing, that it's always this extreme act or feeling. No, there's other levels of mental health, and we need to continue to talk about it. And I can't remember what the second one I was going to say at this point, but
no, I was just thinking right now, if this wasn't attached to a wire, I would give you sort of a metaphorical mic drop over that conversation you just had, because that was just so perfect. That is literally at InvisiYouth, that is like our number one misconception about even physical chronic illness, but definitely with mental health, it is that people forget there's a whole spectrum of mental health. Even in physical illness, you have to be at the very end stage of chronic illnesses of how to do anything before people publicly will get to address what they need. And that with mental health is really one of the largest misconceptions, is there isn't one that you can support yourself with on a daily basis and adapt life around it. It has to be at the most negative end of the spectrum.
Yes, and I also remember the other one that is a misconception that I think is slowly becoming something that people understand, is that you're not the only one who feels this way.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear the phrase "you are not alone" a lot, and I say it a lot in my blog and on my Instagram. When people message me, they feel so alone. And it's like, there are people out there that can relate to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really strong thing for people, who are struggling or who don't know what's going on, to know, is that there are people out there, and it doesn't mean they're necessarily have multiple personality disorder or something like that. They could just feel like you do on a daily basis and relate to you. So, I think it kind of ties together with the first one that I mentioned, but you're really not alone in the mental health journey that you're on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love that you kind of pointed that out too. It is that sort of that lack of discussion really does make both of those stigmas remain stigmas even after 4 years of having InvisiYouth being around. That's still the main topic when it comes to mental health we always get, is people saying, well, I shouldn't ask for help because I'm not that bad yet, or I'm not feeling that sad yet, I'm not feeling this anxious yet. Because they don't think their health in that sense is very warranted. So we'll say, no, if you're feeling something, try and support yourself at the beginning stages, because then you'll have more tools that if it gets progressively worse, you'll have the tools that you've been working with. And that really is something that I think kind of maintains the stigmas, people thinking they shouldn't ask for help in the beginning.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I think something else too, kind of going off of that, what you were saying with asking for support and reminding yourself that you're not alone in the experience, that there's other people that have mental health journeys and struggles in that way, is you being so public about your about using therapy as one of your tools for your mental health, and having that open discussion with a lot of people, especially on social media, seeing a lot of people commenting on those posts of yours when you talk really openly about therapy. But I wanted to ask too, why do you feel like people are very surprised when someone like yourself is open about going to talk therapy? Why do you feel like there is such a stigma of addressing that publicly?
That's so funny because people say, I never would have guessed you go to therapy.
Yeah.
I don't really know why they say that. Maybe it's because I like sunflowers in the color yellow. I don't know.
You're too cheerful.
And I live in Florida, but in my personal opinion, everyone can benefit from therapy wherever you are on your life journey. But I do think there's stigma around it. It goes back to what we were just talking about. The only time therapy is ever brought up is when someone, admits themselves into rehab, or someone's going through something really tough, like, oh, I have to find a therapist. Well, no, you can have a therapist when you're doing well too. And, there are definitely different types of therapy here. And I've done a couple of them, and I've gone through, when I've had to move locations, I've had to find a new therapist. So I've definitely had a handful of different therapists, and I love mine right now. People don't only go to therapy, and they shouldn't only go to therapy when they're at their lowest.
Yeah.
Do I go more frequently when I'm struggling more? Absolutely. But do I completely shut it off when I'm doing well? No. Because, and I know we'll talk more about having kind of a toolkit or a toolbox, but it's one of the biggest ones in mine. And I think that I've been going since I was 19, so 9 years now. Wow. Almost a decade, strong and proud. And I will continue to go, and I will continue to preach that there are benefits in every way. When you are ready to go to therapy, go. It doesn't mean you have to be at your lowest low.
Yeah, and I love how you said that that's sort of a consistent tool that you'll use, that a lot of times people feel that, oh, I'm only going to need it for this amount of time, so why bring it up with people, because I'm not going to need to go forever. But it is sort of a tune-up. It's sort of maintaining, similar to a physical illness. That's always what we'll equate it to in the InvisiYouth chat sessions, or when we do a lot of our virtual work. We'll always say, well, you would naturally go to your doctor regularly for your chronic illness. You have to. It's prescribed for you to go and have checkups and procedures done, and that's sort of lifelong. Why wouldn't you do that for the mental health part of your health, only for the physical health? And I think that's where that common sense sort of clicks in, going, oh yeah, that does make sense. I wouldn't stop going to the doctor because my chronic illness is going to be here for the rest of my life, so I have to support myself medically always. So you should do that on the mental health side too, and talk about those tune-up kind of ways of using therapy.
Right, and it's anxiety and even panic disorder. They're part of who I am, and of course I struggled with trying to kick them out of my life, or avoiding them, or pretending that they're just going to disappear one day. And honestly, truthfully, that's not the fact of it. That's not reality for me. So going to therapy has allowed me to understand where I'm at in that journey, whether it's a little bit low or a little bit high, or it's a different season of anxiety for me. But it's just really helped me to be able to live and thrive even with having it. And I'm okay with that. So, I just think it's something that like you said, you go and get annual checkups or physicals for school every year at a doctor or general practitioner. I mean, what makes mental health different?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I love how you kind of even said it. You said it at one point too, there's all different forms of therapy. And I think that was really great, because even through your blog, you do mention that quite a bit as well, that talk therapy is wonderful, and it is to get professional guidance and all of that from a medical standpoint. But there's other forms of therapy, because some people in the beginning aren't very chatty. And we say that's okay if you don't feel comfortable using your voice in a therapeutic manner. There's so many other types of therapy you can use to sort of gain that confidence in your own health journey at the same time.
Absolutely. And when we dig into going into the toolkit, I'll kind of talk about what I really define as therapy, but it doesn't mean you hire a professional and spend a lot of money.
Yeah, I love a good sport therapy or I love a good animal therapy program.
Yes.
I always joke, people tend to forget that there's music therapy and sport therapy and animal therapy, and those are a lot of settings that you can actually gain. You can actively go on Google, where we usually at InvisiYouth never encourage people to Google their health symptoms, because WebMD is occasionally helpful, but most of the time it scares people. But to actually look up, if you really love animals, look up different therapy programs that deal with animals, or animals that you can actually go to and volunteer that are training therapy dogs or emotional support dogs, or even going to a shelter, and sport therapy's there. We always say people love a good kickboxing class or yoga. Whatever you like is either calm or zen, or you like punching things to sort of release that tension. There's so many types of things that you can add to be therapeutic, and I think that is also a big way of sort of cracking that stigma, is that therapy doesn't always have to be talk therapy.
Right.
Yeah. And I think kind of even going off of that too, something I wanted to mention was sort of what your advice would be as well, or even advice that was given to you through your own mental health journey about being a young adult with balancing their mental health and anxiety with their own personal life, sort of with your own personal journey, whether that is for us a different chronic illness journey, or for yourself just sort of your own progression as a young person. How do you sort of maintain that, what would you suggest other people do to maintain that balance of your mental health also just with your own personal life outside of it?
Yeah, I don't know if there's ever a perfect balance, so we'll put it there. And being okay with that is step number one. Everyone preaches balance, work-life balance, balance with your health and wellness journey. I don't know if there's ever a perfect balance, but I do think striving for that is important. So, and I think this is a little bit different than what I've been talking about, but the way I try to balance it is what I call like prioritizing my mind. And I mean that in a lot of ways. So taking the steps to make sure my physical, actual brain is healthy, because a lot of anxiety and stress has to do with they don't just say mental health. A lot of it has to do with the actual health of your brain.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of ways to keep your brain healthy, keep your mind healthy. And for me, that's obviously being physically active in some way. I mean, I actually love boxing, and you mentioned it. So I don't go every day, though. I probably go once or twice a week. Or, this morning I did some, not even what I would call yoga. I just honestly stretched and foam rolled for like 35 minutes.
Oh, I love foam rolls.
Hurt so good, right?
Yes, so good.
Yeah, so there's that. And also, I don't want to get too into this because I am not an expert in this, but there have been studies out there that show that certain foods actually help with depressive disorders, such as anxiety, or such as a phobia, or such as depression. And I try to make sure I incorporate those foods when I can. Honestly, that's a lot of seafood, wild caught, and making sure you're eating your greens, of course. And I know a lot of people hear this a lot, but it is important. Yeah. So anyone has more interest on that, I would research Dr. Drew Ramsey. He's a clinical psychiatrist, and he speaks a lot on that. But in short, how do I try to keep the balance as I prioritize my mind? And there's a lot of things that go into that, but I always keep that, not to be punny, but top of mind.
Yeah, no, I got it. I didn't get it at first, and then it clicked like 2 seconds after you said it. Okay. But I love how you mentioned, too, that a lot of it is sort of having that discussion, also not only just prioritizing your mind, but you kept mentioning, like, talking to a doctor actively of things that you can do, like adding different sort of foods or changing parts of your diet. That's something you could have a quick phone call with even your own physical doctor too, or a nutritionist, or your psychologist or psychiatrist, things that you might not even be realizing could be helpful to add to a diet or take out or eat less of in your diet that might be of benefit to you, that will sort of give you that extra boost or an extra step sort of moving into the wellness of your mind and sort of that, even that brain chemistry.
Yeah, one more thing on diet. Again, I'm not a nutritionist or anything, but something I found a lot of success personally in, along with trying to incorporate those foods that are good for your mind, good for your brain. You try to eat a balanced diet. Back to balance. And when I say balanced, I mean, I'm not talking about I eat X amount of calories or X amount of carbs, but I just try to make sure I have balanced meals. So like fiber, protein, healthy fats, and some sort of green if I can. Doesn't always make sense, but and doing that kind of allows with less sugar, you have less spikes in your blood sugar, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of those spikes in blood sugar can sometimes cause a spike in anxiety. Have you ever been on a sugar high? I'm sure we've all heard of it. You've seen a little kid eat a cookie and then run a lap.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or, drink an espresso and talk way too much in a meeting. I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
But having those balanced meals, not having too much sugar or too much of anything, kind of keeps you stabilized too. Again, I'm not a nutritionist, but I do a lot of research on this, and I love the registered dietitian. Her name is Kelly Levesque. Her Instagram is Be Well by Kelly, and she talks a lot about this balanced eating to balance your life. No. So that's a big part too.
Yeah, no, I love that too. And I love that you're even sort of giving, even on your end, I always say we're a medical nonprofit. So we always tell everyone, make sure in terms of your own treatment plans that anything that's suggested, you talk to your own doctors and people who've gone to school and have the degrees and licensed. And you mentioning a lot of individuals that have that as well. That's a lot of learning other people can use from those who are licensed medical professionals and then take to their own doctors in their own medical network that they have. So I think that's really a great thing to add, and it kind of even leads into us going into our middle end of our first half of the show, our intermission segment of the show, because I want to kind of have a quick little spike in the middle of our show, and we're going to have Lisa tell me a story in our intermission segment, So That One Time.
So that one time.
So this is where I like to tell everyone with So That One Time, this is where I get to sit back as the host, relax, and let my guest tell me a story that's empowering or funny or emotionally pulling those heartstrings. I get to sit back and relax and let Lisa tell me a story. So Lisa, what is your story for me today?
Here we go. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into my own story, kind of where the journey started. For me, I had mentioned previously in this conversation that I definitely dealt with anxieties of some sort from a very young age that I never really could identify. Mm-hmm. I could give you multiple stories about being in high school and freaking out, not knowing why, and now I know why. But kind of when everything came to a head was I was 19 years old. I was a freshman at the University of Florida. Go Gators! Can't do anything without shouting out the Gators. And my roommates and I, there were 4 of us total, and I love them so much. I'm smiling just thinking about them. My roommates and I all went to the annual Florida-Georgia football game, and it was in Jacksonville. And anyone who's from the South or likes college football, kind of sort of Florida-Georgia, it's called the largest outdoor cocktail party as well. It's a big party.
I love that.
So we were going. Yes. And so we were going, and I offered to drive because I'm I got this. I was I think only a couple of us had a car at that time in college. So I offered to drive, and it was the middle of the night when we could leave. I want to say around 10 or 11 p.m. So we're driving late at night, which wasn't a big deal. Never really had any issues with that. And we're driving, we're jamming out to NSYNC and all the oldies for us, 90s music. And we get to this huge I start driving up this bridge in Jacksonville, 1-lane bridge, don't think anything of it. And as I'm driving, inclining, I'm oh, I start to my hands start to go numb and my feet start to go numb. And I have all my best friends in my car, and I'm driving in the middle of the night. And I did not know what was happening to me. And I look at my friend Caitlin, who's in the passenger seat, and I said, can you talk to me or start a conversation? Because something is going on. I can't feel my hands or my feet.
Gosh.
And I'm really scared I'm going to crash my car and in the middle of the night on this big bridge that's really high. And she was can you hurry up, say something to me? And I was she's have you ever been skydiving? And I was what? I'm already losing it on top of this bridge, and you're talking about jumping out of a plane?
Let's add that to my list of never to do.
Never. And I was what? And I just lost it. And she's I'm sorry, it's the first thing that came to my mind. Anyway, now we can laugh at it, but I was in a total panic. And what I learned was my first full-blown panic attack. I had to pull over actually on that bridge. I was so scared because I felt I was not only didn't know what was happening to me, and I think when you first have a first really big panic attack, you almost feel like you're dying, which sounds so dramatic, but it really is like, am I having a heart attack? I'm not breathing. My hands can't feel anything.
Yeah.
So I pulled over, and thankfully my one of my roommates drove the rest of the way, and they actually had to drive home from Jacksonville too, because I was so scarred for the whole weekend that I just couldn't work up the nerve to get us home. So I'm really thankful for them. It was, looking back at it now, we all make fun of my friend Caitlin. We're like, why out of everything you could have talked to me about did you pick skydiving? And we talked about it at my wedding 2 months ago. What was that? Have you ever been skydiving? But it was a pivotal time in my life, because I just, went off on my own, made new friends who are amazing and still friends to this day. But I realized at that point that there was something wasn't right. And I don't want to say something was wrong with me, because I still felt like me, but
yeah,
I was like, okay, this is coming to a point where I actually put myself and three of my greatest friends in danger. And if that's avoidable, I need to figure out how to get to that point. So to this day, I definitely still have some driving anxiety because of that. I mean, that was almost 10 years ago now. So kind of showing you the trauma that a panic attack can actually bring.
Yeah.
And following that was a series of panic attacks for me. I couldn't come out of my room for a little bit at that point. And that was, I want to say, and I hate to join the bandwagon here, but I was at my lowest low, and that's when I actually was like, I need to fix this.
Yeah.
And I went to therapy for the first time, and I was like, what is happening to me? I can't leave my room. I had to drop out of classes. When I was learning Italian, I could not speak in front of class. I don't know what came over me. But that is when I realized that, I needed to learn more about what was going on with myself, and not only for me, but for those in my life as well. So that was the turning point for me. That's when I started to really ask questions. That's when I started to go to therapy. That's when I started medication. To this day, I've been on and off medication since then. And I thank every day for it. It got me through that rest of that year. So that's really my story. Nothing, I don't know if it's empowering. It has some funny parts to it, but it's just kind of,
there's such a realism to it, and it actually transitions perfectly into the next segment because of having that sort of initial first experience with having a panic attack, which is something with a lot of people with chronic illnesses as well. My mind developed and even sort of pulled through when I was 16 from an injury, and it was sort of that initial experience that snowballed everything else with my physical health after that. So I think that's great with mentioning that, and also talking about having your friends around you in that experience. It's something that as a support network, they then also got to witness that sort of experience on your end, so they, in the next time, they would be able to be more of a support network, because they would then have that experience to look back on and knowing how they could improve, or not mention skydiving, maybe the next time mention bungee jumping. That could have been a second option to see if you'd like to do that instead. But I think that's really great.
Sunflowers and puppies too. I mean, that was probably
better. So going off of that, we're going to go into our next segment, sort of transitioning into the second half, and we're going to go into what's in your toolkit.
What's in your toolkit? What's in your toolkit?
All right, everyone, with what's in your toolkit, you guys know I love a good tip sheet and a guidebook to life, especially with chronic illnesses and disabilities. That's a big thing of what we do at InvisiYouth. So we built an entire segment where our special guests get to talk about all of the things that they would put into their special toolkit, for Lisa's case, for different mental wellness and sort of that lifestyle of mental health improvement. So kind of going off of that, I really wanted to sort of jump right in. You're big into social media. That's a big platform for Adventures&Anxiety, is using those virtual tools. So what are some different virtual tools, whether that's apps of different nature, that you think have been really beneficial for the mental health and the personal wellness community for other people to check out?
So I actually had such a hard time getting into meditation. I still am not very good at it. So I downloaded an app for my friend. It's called Insight Timer. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it. And my therapist even was like, that's the one that I recommend.
Oh, nice.
Have you heard of it?
I have heard of it, yeah, but that's fantastic that you were sort of even on the same wavelength with your therapist, too, that it would be the one they'd suggest, yeah.
So there's guided meditations on there, and I actually have a favorite, I don't know what I would call her, but a featured guided meditation instructor on there. Her name is Sarah Blondin.
Oh, cool.
And she does, first of all, her writing and what she says in those guided meditations just gives you so much life, but the guided meditations on the Insight Timer app, specifically by Sarah Blondin, I highly recommend, especially anyone starting out. I still use them. She has quite a bit of episodes that you could play, and they range anywhere from like 8 minutes to 35 minutes. So if you're a newbie, like, let's start small. I still go small sometimes. I would definitely say to download that app. It is free, and she has free. Her versions are free as well. Highly recommend that. There's a couple other guided meditation apps. I believe Headspace is one of them.
I love a good Headspace. Their television commercials, too, is just sort of a nice 30-second calming moment, and then it goes back to your regularly scheduled programming. But they've got great auditory voices. Whoever does voiceovers for their meditation is just, it's such so calming.
I have both apps. I just lean toward Insight Timer because I like Sarah Blondin so much. She just puts me in the right headspace. So those two are wonderful. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of them before.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to take this the other direction. Apps not to have on your phone if you want to deal with or help your mental health journey. I had a series of my life where I counted calories and macronutrients, and MyFitnessPal was probably the most used app on my phone besides like the messaging app. And let me tell you, that made my anxiety and depression and comparison and self-worth just dunk down the drain. So an app I would say to get rid of if you have anything like that. Unless you really need it, or unless you're trying, you have personal goals you want to reach and it's helpful. I think it's a great app, but I personally can't do the calorie counting apps. I highly recommend you guys do away with those if you have, again, unless you have a personal goal you're trying to reach.
Yeah.
I totally get that, but those definitely do the opposite for me and from a mental health journey.
Yeah, and I kind of like how you said that too. A tip we got from one of our good friends that does a lot of social media influencer work as well, is they said that photo editing apps from a body positivity mindset was really affecting their mental health, and they could tell the second they went onto Instagram for work, they started to feel that they needed to edit every photo they put up in their Insta stories and edit all these factions of it, and it was building their anxiety more and more, and this was their work avenue as a social media marketer and doing that in an influencer page. So they always said that they would download the app when they needed it and then immediately uninstall it when it was done. And they would keep downloading the same app and deleting it every time they needed it. But those in-between spaces of times, they would go a few different days or weeks, whatever their work was using, that they would just remove the app so they never felt the need to always carve out and filter out what different parts of their life were, only when it was necessary for work purposes or working with different companies that they wanted to filter different photos with as well. So I thought that was a really good tip, was only put the app on when you need it and then get rid of it and uninstall it when you don't.
Or like make another folder that you can swipe over on your phone and like tuck it in there. You maybe not delete these, but I've never used it. I know a lot of people who use like the apps that can change your body, like make your waist smaller, or not into that. I've never used one. I hope that never enters my life, but totally. There's something you need a break from, or you can set the timers, or on the phone now has that feature where you can kind of like set a limit for yourself on certain apps when it comes to social media. I work in social media as my full-time job, and I also obviously do a lot of work on it with my blog and with Adventures&Anxiety. So I definitely am working on a balance there, but a good start is kind of putting a time limit on those too. So just a couple of like tech hacks max, I guess.
Yeah, no, I like that. And kind of even going off of that too, what would be sort of, I love a big thing that we're big advocates on with InvisiYouth and that you have with your blog as well, is sort of showing the blend of Western medicine and holistic and Eastern medicine. So what have been, even from the medical professionals in your life, or things that you've suggested? Like I said, this is sort of different personal opinions. None of this is us giving medical advice. Obviously, you would suggest things to speak to a licensed medical professional in all that we're saying, but I wanted to kind of have your tips of things from the holistic and Western side that you think are good things to add, or ask your medical professionals to add into your mental wellness toolkit.
So in my daily life, I combine those things.
Mm-hmm.
I did mention earlier that I take medication prescribed by my psychiatrist, or even you can have it prescribed by a general practitioner. I do take an antidepressant every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very open about that, because I think there is even a bigger stigma around, yeah, you're depressed or you're anxious, sure, but you take medication for it? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
I'm me, and that's totally okay. And I actually will tell Rand, I feel like people I just meet, I'm like, oh my God, you take Prozac too? Like, that's my girl. But people think that it's such a big deal, but it really has improved the quality of my life.
Yeah.
So I do take a therapeutic grade of an SSRI, I believe it's called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor,
Mm-hmm.
Every single day, which is an antidepressant. And also combining that with holistic ways, that's the magic right there. I did mention the food and work by Dr. Drew Ramsey of the foods that actually can help prevent depressive disorders. Like, I'm just saying some that I kind of put into my diet, but like wild-caught salmon, or even he said oysters are great for that. A lot of plant foods, a lot of greens, putting those into my diet. And also, I do work for a vitamins and supplements company full-time. It's called Garden of Life. So I do have access to some great organic whole food vitamins and supplements. So I'm a strong believer in the help that those can do for you. So I take a probiotic every day as well. And there's a lot of research on the gut and to brain health. And remember what I was saying, like, prioritize your mind, keep it healthy. You keep your gut healthy, it's going to keep your brain healthy, and in turn, it's going to help you with a lot of your stress and anxiety, and possibly even depression. Again, not an expert. This is just a lot of studies have shown. You can read up on it. But so vitamins, supplements, probiotics. I take adaptogens as well. It's called ashwagandha. It's been around for hundreds of years, and it's something that's been proven to help just with your stress and cortisol levels, which are linked to anxiety as well. That's getting really holistic there. I also love a good essential oil, lavender. Diffuse that at night.
I'm
if
slow
I can't
clapping
fall
for you right now. For sure.
Yeah.
I'm like slow clapping. Not into the mic, because that would be awkward for our audio listeners for sure.
Yeah, I'm like, rock on with the lavender. Love essential oils. But also, I've said this many times, just moving. You can walk. You can do yoga. You can go to the gym and lift weights, which I really enjoy. You can go to boxing. You can walk your dog. I mean, whatever. Just moving and keeping that body and brain healthy. Really important. And sunshine. Vitamin D works wonders. And I'm lucky enough to live in Florida, so
the Sunshine State.
the Sunshine State, literally. So that definitely helps. But again, I combine the two.
Yeah.
I am not ashamed that I take an antidepressant every morning. I will talk about it with anyone who wants to hear more. I'm sure if there are questions, a lot of them, especially on my social media, my blog, a lot of people ask me about that. Mm-hmm. Again, I can't prescribe anything, but I can say with confidence that it has improved the quality of my life tenfold.
Yeah, and it's something to have a discussion with your doctor, which I always say is take the tools and ideas that we garner through our toolkit and then pass that into your own medical professionals that know you and your body and your health the best, and see what works for you and not. But I think the one thing, even kind of going off of that, is something we always will say at InvisiYouth when it comes to using that blend of Western and holistic and integrative medicine is, even on both ends of it, is we call it the sort of 90 90-day trial, that even if you were going to rent a car or use different things for work or different tech pieces, you would want to have that 3-month, that 90 days to really test it out before you would return it and get your money back naturally in sort of a purchase of a product too. So we say that should kind of reflect into your medical treatment plan and your sort of adaptive wellness and day-to-day is really giving it an honest try. If you go and try, everyone who speaks to me knows that acupuncture has been blended into my Western medicine journey with my chronic illnesses. It's been helpful for the secondary side effects and symptoms of my chronic illnesses to help out with some of those. Naturally, it can't cure my chronic illnesses and my connective tissue disorders, but it can help with some of the side effects and the secondary issues that help and sort of end up or become harmful for my day-to-day chronic illness living. So, but you have to, I've told people, don't go to one acupuncture treatment and then say, oh, I didn't like it. You can try other acupuncturists. You can try it for a few treatments and then make your educated decision of maybe this isn't right for me or maybe I should try something else. So we always will suggest from your toolkit is leave it in the toolkit for 90 days and then make the decision of whether or not you want to remove it and put something else in your toolkit or keep it going or try somebody else that is a specialist in those areas. Giving it the actual try before rejecting it is a big suggestion for people.
Yeah, I love the 90-day trial thing. I think that's fantastic. Also, I don't know where therapy lies in this. I know we talked a lot about it. I did want to touch on being in my toolkit. Obviously, therapy is a big one for me, but therapy doesn't have to mean hiring a professional and going to a licensed or social worker or, a psychologist.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that. Therapy to me means expression in some sort of way, right? For me, so it's like whether that's someone you find that you can trust and talk to and lean on, it's therapeutic to talk about how you're feeling. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, granted, I love my therapist who's licensed and I pay to go see her. But that doesn't diminish what a good friend or a good family member or a good colleague that you just trust can do. Or journaling is a big one for people. For me, I think a lot of us, instead of writing, we type or like put it in the notes on our phone. I'm guilty of that. I won't even use the word guilty. I definitely do that. So just expressing yourself, I think that's a good starting point for the holistic outlook on things. Expression in some form is, if you don't like to write, go for a walk. If you don't like to walk, try meditating. Something that you can express your thoughts in some way.
I love this. Literally, everyone see my fun note cards. First question was, what are tools and force of therapy that you can use in your toolkit? So you just jumped right into what was going to be the last question of the toolkit. Perfect mind reading status over here. I love a big thing that we'll say, too, for young people wanting to go into that therapy route is, especially for students that are in high schools or universities, counseling is present and it is free, especially for a cost-effective manner, because that's a big drawback that a lot of our young adults will say is from the cost standpoint. It's something they worry when they have to pick between their chronic illness or disability and their mental health. They will tend to pick their physical health over at most times because that is something they need physically in order to function. But we'll say that especially in those schooling settings, that is cost effective. It's free counseling. It's present for you. So actively find that in your university or in your high school to use and use that as an outlet in those young adult years that you have. That's fantastic. Lots of these different apps are free as well. So that's beneficial. I know the app Talkspace does a lot of that as well, and they partner you up with licensed and clinical psychologists and psychiatrists. Even just using their social media and seeing the articles they write as well kind of gives you different direction. So that's a benefit for that. And like I always say, even similar apps, even like the meditation apps, there's different ones. You can try one, and like I say, do that. It's like therapy and mental health dating. You kind of give it a try, you give it a couple dates, see if you like it, and then on to the next if you don't, and try something else. It's like dating for your health, your body, and your mind, basically. This is dating for you.
Yes, totally. I forgot to mention the first therapist I ever went to was through the University of Florida Counseling and Wellness, free to students, and I am so grateful that was a resource for students at the time. So I'm sure it still is, and I'm sure it's available other places. So yes, great call out for that. definitely check out some free resources and make use of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of even going off of that, when you said your first sort of experience with therapy was in the university setting, at that point we would qualify you as medically adultish, which is our fun trademark word that we have to describe young adults in all types of health struggle. So we're going to go into our last segment with the same trademark of ours, Medically Adultish Guidebook.
Medically Adultish Guidebook.
All right, everyone, with the Medically Adultish Guidebook, so often young adults living with any sort of health struggle, chronic illness, mental health struggles, or disability, we're trying to not only find themselves as a young person, but also find out what they need for their medical health and their wellness and their mental wellness. So we have decided to try and build the guidebook and the Medically Adultish Guidebook, as we would say, for mental wellness, and especially given that we get to use Lisa as such a powerful resource with her blog and social media being an empowering tool for mental wellness and building that resource for others. We wanted to make a guidebook of the blend of mental health and social media use in your daily lifestyle. So kind of just jumping right into that, how would you say people can use social media or blogging as a tool for the positive aspect of their mental wellness?
So I think social media blogging can harm some people in a mental health space. So I think it's really important to know how to use it as a force for good. Me, blogging specifically is super therapeutic. It's my form of journaling. I have kind of a writing background, so for me, it fuels me. It's definitely a passion of mine. So blogging for myself first and foremost is therapeutic, but knowing that my words help others is also therapeutic. So do something that you love, and if that's in my case writing, go for it and find people that you can resonate with. Social media, how can this is a tough one because I really think social media can be harmful, and I myself have fallen into a trap where I needed to take a step back because it was ruling too many decisions in my life. But I always tell people, and it's actually one of my social media posts that I wouldn't say went viral, but definitely got shared a lot, was that unfollow every single person on Instagram, or hide, or mute, or whatever you want to do that makes you feel the need to be somebody or something you're not. If they're not fueling you and inspiring you, get rid of them. They don't need to be on your feed. I have unfollowed a lot of people and a lot of influencers, really, even though I respect the work that they do. I make sure I keep who I'm following and I keep my feed very inspiring and uplifting. So when I go on social media, I don't leave feeling like crap. I leave feeling like, I can conquer the day. So whether that, and sometimes that's just people being real. Like, it doesn't have to be a highlight reel. It could be like, dude, I had a crap day and I had to schedule my second therapy appointment for the week. I've definitely been there. But again, leaving those sites and leaving those pages, you want to feel more uplifted than you want to feel bogged down. And if you're feeling bogged down, you need to make some changes.
I'm going to be totally ridiculous. How can you mute on Instagram? That I was just going, you can tell how much I am into social media. I'm very confused. You mute people?
Yes. Oh my God, it's the best feature. And if you mute me, I feel no hard feelings. You actually go to you go to their page and there's 3 dots in the top corner, I believe, top right corner, and you click it and you can click mute stories, mute posts, or mute both. So you don't unfollow them.
My God, this is just light bulb moment here. Oh my God. Okay, there we go.
Yes.
That's a tip as well. Teach Dominique things.
Instagram hack. Mute.
I love that. No, oh my God, that actually just goes perfectly into what was it's literally on this. What are some tips to use social media in a healthy manner? And I love that. Muting people on social media, and even like you said, the unfollowing accounts that do put you, if you can look at the same person's account on 2 or 3 occasions and you still feel that negative or sort of sympathetic towards yourself response or envious response of yourself in the same person's post multiple times, muting, as I'm learning, or unfollowing is a perfect way to sort of eliminate that stressor from your social media feed so it's not an emotional reaction that you constantly would have. And I know a big tip that we got, I mention this tip all the time from our friend Paige Proviver, who's a social media influencer. She's a co-founder of the nonprofit The Breasties. She said that she dates her posts a few weeks after they actually happen, so she can emotionally deal with the different experiences she's going to post about in her own personal time and her personal life, and then she feels more ready and stronger when she posts about the experience 2 or 3 weeks later. So her social media framework in her life is a few weeks behind her own personal life journey. They're a few weeks in distance of time, and that's
really cool. I think that's a great tip. Also, it's so funny because I've caught myself in this trap of only showing the highlights of your life. I love a good picture. I love photography. I got married this year. I had some great highlights, but I remember I had a blog post scheduled, and it was about the positive attributes of anxiety, which I believe there are definitely some of them. And it was a really hard week for me. And I was trying to post it one morning at the airport, like waiting to go on a work trip. And I was like, I can't post this because you know what? I don't believe it right now.
Yeah.
I wasn't there. So staying true to yourself in all walks of life is always important. But I think in social media, it gets kind of hard when there's all these beautiful pages and beautiful people. And, it can be hard to not compare yourself to those, but set some boundaries with that big thing in life. Setting boundaries, a big thing with anxiety. Like I said, I am a recovering people pleaser. Set some boundaries with the platform. If you have to use that time limit app on the iPhone, go for it. I use it sometimes just depending on where I'm at with it, or do a spring clean on your, I go through who I'm following and I'm like, bye. It's not that I don't like them as people, but I'm like, their content and their message is not resonating with me right now.
Yeah.
So don't be bad.
No, and I love that you said the big thing, too, because a lot of people with social media, especially in the mental health community or in the chronic illness community, when they're trying to use it as building a resource for other people, it's cathartic for them, but building a resource where they can support other people. Even our nonprofit is so heavily dependent on our use of social media to be a virtual resource and have our virtual programming, to have InvisiYouth chat sessions as well, to make it virtual. But we'll always even say, I'm even reading it on my card too, of having you set those boundaries, whether that's taking a certain day or two off during every week of where you won't look at your social media or interact with it there, or being able to take a break. And you had said, I think I've even asked you this before when you were very open and honest, going, hey, I'm posting this and this is sort of a post that I'll come back to you guys on our social media in a bit. I need to take a break from social media. Your following was still there when you came back after taking that social media break. That's a big fear, especially for young adults that are using this as a tool for employment at some times, or for their own blogging careers, or within their own platforms. They become nervous if they don't post in the regular scheduling that they do, that they'll lose all of their following and start back at the bottom and have to work up again. So I think, you even mentioned, taking that break is beneficial for you, and you'll be able to grow your platform more authentically when your mental health is in positive mindsets of doing so.
Yes. I have taken breaks. I believe the longest one I took was 12 or 13 days, which seems like, oh, that's nothing. But when you work in that world, it is a lot.
Yeah, no, it is.
And I came back, and honestly, my following had grown a little bit, which is really funny. That just means, again, staying true to myself was working, and I don't want anyone in that space that is only there for a daily pretty picture. Don't get me wrong, I love pretty pictures, but I think taking a break sometimes is really important, and knowing and seeing that it didn't affect what I was doing or that my message was reaching people was even more a reason to take the breaks when I need them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that you said that too. I kind of wanted to even end that note and sort of end this segment of the show with sort of a last question of how you really can, what would be sort of your tips or part of your guidebook to combat the negative experiences of having your social media with mental health, and not even just using it, but how do you combat when you're in having a more of a setback with your mental wellness or even with your own physical health? How do you continue to sort of find the positive in doing the work that you do when you are feeling that stressor on your mental health?
I'm going to have to think about this one. So I always go back to my toolkit, as we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not feeling like I'm in a good place mentally, which happens often. I go back to the things that I know work, and a lot of that is making sure I'm going to therapy again. I'm going to repeat myself like crazy, but taking the vitamins, taking my medication, like prioritizing that over social media. But then, making it, instead of making it a priority, making it, my mental health is my priority. And obviously speaking my truth is a big passion of mine. And it's really important to me, but you have to prioritize you first. And that doesn't necessarily mean posting on Instagram, right? Staying positive is tough. I don't necessarily think you always have to stay positive on social. I think being real is really important. But I think this is something I'm still figuring out, to be honest, is like finding that healthy balance with social media, and my blog, and also with my mental health. Obviously, blogging is therapeutic for me, and it allows me to express myself. So it does help me, but at times I find myself trying to please the people that are following me, and I hate when I do that. I'll like post something, I'm like, man, I forced that. And after I feel that, like I don't feel good about it, I take a break. Yeah. And I just think you have to kind of like be in tune to yourself, and that's the only way to really combat those inauthentic ways of social media, is just look inward and start there.
Yeah, and I think even kind of going off of that, a big suggestion we'll always say, or even a common sense mindset moment that we'll say at InvisiYouth, is your social media, whether that's comments people are giving you or even physically within your own sort of things that are, I don't want to use the word trigger lightly, but things that trigger your anxiety or your mental wellness and putting you in those setbacks, whether you're dealing with depression or anxiety, and it's sort of pushing those setbacks on. You have to realize that a lot of that is you are a completely dimensional person, and social media is two-dimensional. Your comments are two-dimensional. It's on a screen. You can't, that's not tangible as you, the human being that you are, is. So you have to sort of put that into the priority seat with your physical health and your mental health, and then put the things around you that are affecting your health in a negative way as sort of realizing they're secondary, and that common sense, it's two-dimensional. You can't tangibly use that as a benefit all the time. You have to do other things to help with your own health during the year.
Right. Totally.
Well, kind of going off of that, before we wrap up and I get to tell you guys where to find Lisa on social media so you can see these fabulous bright and light and sunflower photos and these cool boards of notes that she puts up, before we get to that, I wanted to also thank you guys always for supporting InvisiYouth Charity and our chat sessions through your donations and fundraising. Like I said, we are a nonprofit. Your donations help us keep this part of our virtual programming and allow us to continue providing virtual resources, leadership programming internationally, and our free events that we host. So I know right now we're going to have a little link popping up below on the screen and in our description box of where you can always be bringing that support. Give us reviews and ratings on our YouTube channel or iTunes. We will shout you out on the show when you do that, just because that gets to allow us to keep providing this virtual programming for you and be able to support so many of these amazing young adults with all chronic illnesses and disability across the physical and mental health spectrum. So we thank you guys for that, and always continuing to donate and support us in any capacity is really thankful from myself as the founder of InvisiYouth and for our entire team. So if you want to see more episodes like this, those donations are super helpful for us and allow us to keep the lights on, as I say. So ending this episode, I want to really, really thank Lisa for being our special guest. It was so much fun having you. I think this is going to be a really fantastic topic for people, especially young adults, to dig their teeth into and really get some positive notes and motivation from. But I want people to be able to continue to get to know you and Adventures and Anxiety more after the episode. So where can people find your blog and you on social media?
Well, first of all, thank you again for having me. It was so wonderful to be able to get out from behind the screen and actually have this conversation and have other people be able to hear it. So I really, really thank you and everything that you do for having me today. And you guys can find me super simple, adventuresandanxiety.com, and on Instagram at Adventures&Anxiety, and also on Facebook at Adventures&Anxiety. You will definitely see those sunflowers popping up and letterboards. Big fan.
Love it.
Yeah. So again, thank you guys so much. I really hope this resonates and people can relate. I'm always here to talk. You can always DM me or anything like that. Please, I do my best to reply to everyone. So I just want to be here for you guys and walk the talk. Walk. Is that the right term? Yeah.
Yes, it is. I had to think about it too. No, definitely. We're going to link all of Lisa's blog and her social media below as well, so you can go right to that and follow and read a lot of her posts and see all of her beautiful photos, as we've been pointing to all the time. And as usual, you can find InvisiYouth Charity through our website, InvisiYouthCharity.com, our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at InvisiYouth, and the InvisiYouth chat sessions on YouTube, and our audio podcast that's all over our audio podcasts where you can find them: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Deezer, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us there. Definitely hit that subscribe on all platforms and follow us. We really appreciate all the love. And I can't wait until we get to bring you another episode of the InvisiYouth chat sessions. I will see you soon and speak to you soon. Bye.